Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. 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 Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai. Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai. Od Avinu, Od Avinu, Od Avinu Chai. Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael 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 Chai.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm Rabbi Barry Silver. It's my great pleasure on behalf of Congregation Va-Dor to welcome you to our celebration of Shabbat, as well as Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. We are celebrating Israel's birthday. And this took place in 1948 on the 5th of Iyar, the Hebrew month of Iyar. And Israel is the pride and joy, not only of the Jewish people, but of all people throughout the world who cherish hope and who cherish freedom. There are many jokes about Israel, which makes sense, since some of the best comedians are Jews. One that I like to tell is about the four people standing on a street corner, and a surveyor comes over and wants to ask them a question. So there's a hippie, an American, a Chinese, and an Israeli. And he says, "I'd like to get your opinion on the meat shortage." The hippie says, "What's meat?" The Chinese person says, "What's an opinion?" The American says, "What's a shortage?" And the Israeli says, "What's excuse me?" You know, Israelis have had to be pretty darn tough. And some people like to make fun of this and also refer to Israelis as a sabra. The native Israeli is a sabra. Sabra is a fruit that is tough on the outside and soft on the inside. We celebrate the indomitable spirit of the Jewish people reflected in the Israeli people who have fought hard in order to establish a Jewish state. To join us in this wonderful celebration and sponsoring our Shabbat, we are thrilled to have Ann and Michael Herman, our sponsor, and they will be lighting the Shabbat candles to symbolize the light reflecting joy and love, because they're doing this in honor of their 3 grandchildren for whom they have so much love. Olivia Herman, who is graduating from high school, Ryan Herman, who is graduating from college, and Rachel Herman, who is graduating from grad school, getting a doctorate in physical therapy. We also have an Israeli hero, Tzachi Gadish, who fought with the IDF, who is someone who we respect and admire so much on the front lines of Israel. Someone he's conservative in his outlook, but he joins with progressive Jews because we believe all Jews, Kol Yisrael, should be under one roof. Conservatives and liberals, Israelis and Americans. It's great to have him participating. He represents the pride of Israel and the pride of the Jewish people for our great Israeli soldiers. And he will be joining us also in reading a prayer for Yom HaZikaron. This takes place the day before Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, and remembers the tremendous sacrifice that our people have made to establish the state of Israel. He reads this prayer in honor of fallen soldiers who died for Israel. And we're also going to have a medley of songs of Hatikva, which is the national anthem of the Jewish state of Israel. It means the hope. This is a beautiful song. And I hope that when we hear Hatikva, we will be filled with hope for the future, not only of Israel, not only of the Jewish people, but of the world, now that we have a Jewish state to help humanity progress. And now let the celebration of Israel and Shabbat begin.
Shabbat Shalom. As we kindle the lights of Shabbat, we remember the words of the Torah. The Torah is light. The mitzvah is a lamp. May we observe Shabbat this and every week by learning Torah, by doing mitzvot, kindling the light of good deeds and basking in their light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotov v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
May we be blessed with Shabbat joy. May we be blessed with Shabbat peace. May we be blessed with Shabbat light. And this week, we, Ann and I, are blessed with our granddaughter's graduation from High Point University with her doctorate of physical therapy.
I would just like to say that what we're hoping is that we will soon be back in a regular building so that we can all enjoy Shabbat together. The Friday night services are amazing. The music and the videos add so much joy. But we want this whole epidemic to be behind us so that we can be in one place again. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
שבת שלום לדור ודור חברים, קידוש, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, ושבת קודשו בעברו ורצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כיום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן. Chaverim, as we remember our fallen soldiers and others, 23,928 as of today, given their life, the future, aspiration, and dreams, so we can fulfill them and we can be today still with a strong country and strong heritage that protect us in Israel and the diaspora. יזכור עם ישראל את נשמות חיילי צבא הגנה לישראל שמסרו נפשם על קידוש השם ונפלו גיבורים במערכות ישראל למען ארצנו הקדושה. מנשרים קלו, מאריות גברו, בצאתם להנחיל ניצחון עולם לישראל. זכר עקידתם ומעשה גבורתם לא יסופו מאיתנו לעולם, ונפשותיהם תהיינה צרורות בצרור החיים, עם נשמות שאר גיבורי ישראל וקדושיו בגן עדן, ונאמר אמן. So as we always say, just remember, gedankt, תזכור, יזכור, jamais, never again. שלום לכולם, להתראות בקרוב. We want the pandemic, we win everything else. Also we want overpower too. שלום.
אנו מכריזים בזאת על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל, היא מדינת ישראל.
כל עוד בלבב פנימה, נפש יהודי הומיה, ולפתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון צופיה. עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון בירושלים.
אבינו, אבינו,
שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. אבינו אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. ברך ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. הגן עליה בעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך. עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
It was Charlemagne who said that when you speak a second language, you acquire a second soul. And so it is that the Jewish people acquired a new soul, a second soul, the soul of our ancestors, when they revived the Hebrew language, the first time in the history of planet Earth that a language considered dead came back to life. And when they did that, they revived the idealism and the spirituality of our ancestors and made Hebrew, which was thought dead, come alive. What tremendous inspiration to see the language of Hebrew spoken by children and spoken by dreamers today. And so when we say these prayers in the language of Hebrew, let us remember that Hebrew is a miracle language showing the indomitable spirit of the Jewish people. As we hear these prayers and listen to them, let us interpret them in a way that makes sense to each one of us in our own individual way. And let us remember that even though parts of us may feel dead inside, or we might think that a part of us is no longer alive, let us remember that because Hebrew became a spoken language once again, because the Jewish people revived once again in the land of Israel under the Hatikva, the hope, every part of us, even parts of us that we think were long gone, can indeed come back to life and be revived. Let us be inspired by these wonderful prayers from our tradition.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malachuto Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malachuto Leolam Vaed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לעוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
שתלתם ניגונים בי אמי ואבי, ניגונים מזמורים שפופים, גרעינים נשאם לבבי, עתה הם עולים וצומחים, עתה הם שוכבים פורות בדרי, שורשיהם בעורקיי שלובים, ניגונך אבי ושירייך אמי, ודופקי נאורים
Last week in Israel, to commemorate Yom HaZikaron LeShoah VeLeGavura, the day of remembrance of the Holocaust and of heroism, they were silent for 2 minutes. Everything in Israel stopped. people got out of their cars and all activity came to a halt. And then, the day before Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, was again Yom HaZikaron, a day of remembrance of the fallen soldiers who gave their lives for Israel, and also, of course, the wounded soldiers we think of on this historic occasion. And why do we use a moment of silence? Because when we are engaged with the rest of the world, we communicate, we speak to others. When we're silent, we shut out everything else, and we cut off all connection with the outside world. And that's really what happened to those fallen soldiers. Their lives came to an end. They were no longer able to interact with others as they paid the ultimate price and made the ultimate sacrifice. And so we think of them as we go silent for 2 minutes or for 1 minute. And now we're going to have a few moments of silent meditation. We do this for the same reason. We take a moment to pause and reflect and to give thanks for those who gave their lives for freedom and for the establishment of Israel. And we also think not only of the fallen soldiers, but also of how fortunate we are because of their sacrifice to live in a time when there is a Jewish state. We give thanks for the Jewish state, which is a blessing not only to Jewish people, but to all people. Jews, Christians, Muslims, Baha'i, all have their holy places in the state of Israel and are all given great respect. Now there is religious freedom for once in the Middle East, and we hope that this freedom in Israel will spread to her neighbors, which will be able to benefit from the blessings of Israel as soon as they recognize that they will be so much better off when they try to imitate Israel rather than destroy her, when they try to imitate the blessings of democracy and of freedom rather than to annihilate it. As we enter into a moment of silent meditation, let us also meditate on the goal and the dream of Jews and Israelis living in peace with our neighbors. If we want to make it real, we first have to conceive of it, and then we have to believe in it, and then we can achieve it. A few moments of silent meditation.
מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, הוא יברך את החולים. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, הוא יברך את החולים. וישלח להם מהרה רפואה, רפואה שלמה מן השמיים, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף, ונאמר אמן. מי שברך אבותינו, מי שברך אמותינו, הוא יברך את החולים.
על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. השלושה דברים שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד.
Our Torah reading this Shabbat is from the book of Leviticus, chapter 12, verses 1 through 7. The passage, or parasha, also called Sedra, is called Tazria. Tazria means, and when she shall conceive. Tazria is related to the Hebrew word zera, and this entire passage talks about laws of purification after things such as childbirth or illness and other types of things that can happen to someone that could cause ritual impurity, according to our ancestors.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMavarach, Baruch Adonai HaMavarach le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et tochato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
If you've been watching these Shabbat celebrations, you'll notice I'm no longer wearing glasses to read the Torah. I've been eating carrots lately, and I think it's helping my vision, but let's see if I can make out the little letters in the Torah with a very, very big and powerful significance. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, and God said to Moses as follows, Daber el bnei Yisrael, v'lemor, tell the children of Israel as follows, Isha ki tazria v'yalda zachar v'tam'a shiv'at yamim kimei nadat dota. If a woman shall give birth to a male child, she shall be impure, unclean, for 7 days, as she is during the time of her period. Uvayom hashmini yamul basar achalotu, and on the 8th day they shall circumcise the son. V'shloshim yom v'shloshet yamim teshev b'dimei tahara, b'chol kodesh lo tig'a ve'el hamikdash lo tavo. And she shall go through a period of ritual impurity for 33 days, during which time she shall touch nothing holy, nor shall she enter into any holy place. Ad melot yemei tahara, until the end of her purification period. Ve'im nekeva teled v'tam'a shiv'im shavuayim k'nidata v'shishim yom v'sheshet yamim. But if she gives birth to a female, instead of 1 week impurity, is now 2 weeks impurity, and she shall have to go through a purification process, not of 33 days, but of 66 days. People have wondered why double the amount of impurity for a female. Many ingenious devices have been contrived in order to try to explain this and to try to overcome the apparent misogyny. Some say, well, a woman gives birth and therefore she is the progenitress of life and therefore the purification period takes twice as long. We don't really know why this is, but it's probably just something that we can chalk up to some of the misogyny in the Torah that we have fortunately since outgrown. And now continuing with the Torah reading. Uv'malaot yamei tahara leven o levat tavi keves ben shenoto la'ala uven yonah o tor. And now not only was the Torah not so sympathetic towards women's equality, they also were not quite up to our modern standards of kindness to animals, because now at the end of the purification period they have to slaughter a sheep of 1 year old and a turtle dove in order to seek purification. lechatat al petach ohel moed el hakohen v'takrivu livnei Adonai v'chaper aleha. And they shall take this sacrifice and bring it to the tent of meeting, present it to the priest, and there they shall seek atonement for their sin. We don't really understand why it would be considered a sin to give birth or impurity. All we can conjecture perhaps is they noticed, sadly, many, many women died during childbirth. And so they figured the gods must be angry about that. So there must be some type of ritual impurity associated perhaps with the blood. And therefore they sought to do something to try to help alleviate women's death during childbirth. And since they didn't know anything about medicine, this was the best they could do. The blessing after the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu tuchat emet, v'chai olam nata b'tochenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten ha'torah. As we read this passage, we recognize that our ancestors were desperate to try to understand why were women dying during childbirth, how sad, how tragic that they would give birth and not live in order to celebrate motherhood with their child and have a child raised without its own mother. And so to avoid this tragedy, they did what they could. Let us give thanks for science. Because of science, we now have women who are able to deliver children, and the children are healthy, the mothers are usually healthy, and so now we normally get to have children spend time with their mother, not having their mother die of childbirth at childbirth. This is a wonderful blessing given to us by science. Back in the old days when Israel was founded in 1948, it was a very young country and it didn't quite have the infrastructure, which we talk about so much in the United States today, as fully developed as other countries. And they had some growing pains when they first started out, but the Israelis, with their wonderful optimism and their ingenuity, were able to overcome these very quickly. But there's a story from the early days of Israel about a person who was just so despondent about all the difficulties that he was lying on a train track, tied to the train track, and somebody came by and says, what's with you, man? Why are you doing this? He says, I can't take it anymore. It's too tough. I'm going to end it all by lying on this train track. And he had a loaf of bread on him, and the man said, I understand why you want to commit suicide, but what's with the loaf of bread? And he says, by the time the train comes around here in Israel, you could starve to death. You know, we have a lot of jokes about Israelis, which reflect the great sense of humor of the Jewish people. But let us marvel at how far Israel has come. And what an incredible success story Israel is. The only country to revive a dead language, as I've mentioned before. The only country to have more trees today than it did when it was founded. An incredible country that we're going to be hearing about later on in this Shabbat celebration, with ingenuity, with technology, and perhaps most importantly, with an neshama, a heart that actually goes out and brings financial and economic and medical relief to the third world and even to Syria, which is trying to destroy them, helping the refugees, a place with a Jewish neshama, which can see its flowering and fruition in the Jewish state, which is now bringing blessings of technology and Jewish know-how and compassion to the world. We celebrate Israel on this wonderful day. The passage that we read, Tazria, talks about a quarantine. The Jewish people were the first ones perhaps to figure out that when somebody gets sick, you should take a look at what the rash looks like and determine, is this contagious or not? And so depending on how it looked, people might be in quarantine for a while. And perhaps this is why Jews fared so much better during plagues, because they used cleanliness and hygiene and washing their hands, and also separation and quarantine. A quarantine during sickness is a good thing. A quarantine for perfectly healthy people is not. Today, sadly, we treat each other as if we're all sick. We quarantine ourselves, self-imposed shackles and manacles of the mind and of the body. As we say, oh, I'm not going to talk to this person belongs to a different political party. I'll have nothing to do with them. This person backs a different candidate. This person belongs to a different denomination of Judaism than I do. This person belongs to a different religion or a different race. How tragic to see across the country the breakdown of race relations as police officers sometimes are racist and sometimes practice institutional racism against African Americans and others. My friends, let us never be deceived by watching the news into thinking that most police officers are doing terrible things. They are not. Most police officers are doing wonderful things, courageous things, protecting us and safeguarding our democracy and our freedom. Our freedoms would mean nothing if we didn't have someone who was actually enforcing them and guaranteeing them through the law. So let us give thanks. However, let us also recognize a police officer who has a badge and the authority of the state and a gun has tremendous capacity. They have the ability to dictate life and death for those with whom they come into contact. It was Lord Acton who said that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and a police officer with a gun for that moment has absolute power. And therefore, we must do a better job of screening our candidates, of training them better, and also of getting rid of officers who have a track record for violence and abuse. Yes, they are few, but even if 1 in 100 police officers is doing the wrong thing and is dangerous, that will result in shootings and death and mayhem throughout the country. And so we must hold police officers to a very high standard, and we must congratulate and thank and give accolades to the good ones and instantly get rid of the bad ones. So we must not quarantine ourselves according to race or ideology or partisan politics. No, rather, we must bring people together. That is the goal of the Jewish people. And what does Israel have to say about that? In Israel, you have Jews and Muslims and Christians, and you have atheists, you have Baha'i and others, all coming together in one place, all their holy sites respected, and Arabs are treated with more freedom in Israel than any other country in the Middle East. So Israel is an example of what we can achieve and how we can break down quarantines and bring people together. I hope as we celebrate Israel, we will do that in this country, and we will try to join together with other people. The name Yisrael means one who struggles with God. What that means, my friend, is to be Jewish, to be a child of Israel, is not to just blindly follow the religion of the past and just say, oh yes, I believe in God because I was told to do so by a rabbi, by the Torah, by my heritage. That's not what being Jewish is. Being Jewish means one who struggles with God. It means that we must grapple with the concept and use all of our powers of reason and understanding and science and logic and intuition and compassion in order to try to understand what it is, this power, this creative force in the world that's within us and within all living things that unites all, that is inside of all, that transcends all, this creative process, constantly transforming what is into what could be. Yes, let us devote all of our reason and all of our abilities and all of our faculties and our hearts and minds and our soul in order to understand and to grapple and to struggle and not just blindly accept this force. That's what it means to be a child of Israel. What else does Israel mean? Israel used to be called Palestine. Palestine was the name that was given to it by the Romans when they took over Israel and threw out the Jews. They gave it a Greek name, the name of the invaders. Palestine comes from Philistine, which were Greek-speaking people who invaded Israel, non-native people. So when Israel became a state, they reestablished the name Yisrael, proudly saying, this is now a Jewish state. It's also called the land of Zion, Zion. What does Zion mean? Zion means someone who is distinctive, someone who transcends the norm. Zion means to distinguish oneself. You know, as a basketball coach, last week my team had a great game. We were winning by a lot. And I called the team over and I said, there's not much time left. We're winning by a lot. Let up. Have a little rachmanis. You don't need to pulverize them. And you know what they said to me? They said, no, these guys are trash talking us. They have it coming. They deserve it. They were bragging and they were treating us horribly. And I remember the words of my father. My father said, don't treat others the way they treat you. Treat them the way they should treat you. And I said to the team after the game was over, I said, you know, first, of course, we want to be victorious. But once you know that you're victorious, and once you've established that you are the better team today, then you have something else to establish. Establish that you can be a mensch, a gentleman. Establish that you have compassion, that you're not obnoxious, and rude. And don't behave the way other people do. Behave the way they should. That's what Sion means, Zion. To be a Zionist means that Israel does not treat other countries the way they treat Israel. It means that we rise to a higher standard, a Hebrew national named Moses, who left the comfort zone of the palace to free his people. Yes, Sion means to be a shining example. Israel was never meant to be like all the other states. It was never meant to imitate the worst impulses of humanity. It was meant to be an example. Sion, a shining city on the hill. And so Israel is meant to show other countries what humanity and what a nation is capable of achieving. And so our goal as Jews is not just to be rah-rah supporting Israel, it's to hold Israel to the higher standard, and when it falls short, to criticize, because dissent is the highest form of patriotism. Let us be proud of Israel, and let us constantly strive to make it even better by daring to criticize, as we do also in the United States of America. And so on this wonderful occasion, when we celebrate the birth of Israel, we remember the words of Herzl, Im tirtzu en zo agadah. If you will it, it's no dream. Israel establishes for the Jewish people and for the world that if you decide on making your dreams come true and you work hard and you're inspired, you can make it happen. One final thing I want to say about Israel. Do you know that Orthodox Jews in the beginning of Israel rejected the state? They didn't support the state? No. They said, we can't support Israel. There's a time frame delineated in the Torah. It says first, God will send the Messiah, and then the Jews will return to Israel. By doing it yourself, you're usurping God and violating the Torah, and they rejected it, and they didn't support it. Many Orthodox still don't. They refuse military service. But once Israel was established, what happened? All of a sudden now, they want to take it over and make it as if Israel should become Orthodox. And they use political maneuvers in order to try to make the whole country like they are. Let us, the rest of the Jews, rise up and say, no, Israel is for all Jews of every background and for all people. You didn't even want to establish it in the beginning. But before we get too complacent, Reform Jews didn't want Israel either. In the beginning, Reform Jews said, we don't need Israel. Judaism is a system of ethical beliefs and values. Our nationality is secondary. We can be Jewish without having our own state. We can just live up to high ideals and principles. That was the very beginning of Reform. Since then, Reform has changed dramatically, as has Orthodox. Now, both Orthodox and Reform support Israel. And the final thing I want to say is that Israel was established by secular Jews, Jews who believed in reason and Jewish ideals. And that is what Va-Dor is all about. And that's what cosmic Judaism is all about. It's using reason and science and logic to inspire us to great things without having to believe in supernatural beings. And once we combine the revelations of Judaism and of science and the indomitable spirit of the Jew reflected in the Jewish state, we can help humanity accomplish anything under the motto Im tirtzu and zo agadah. If you will it, and if you have hope, hatikva, it is no dream. Shabbat Shalom and Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach. Happy Independence Day.
Israel is the 100th smallest country on the globe and has about 1/1000th of the world's population. It's only 70 years old, smaller than New Jersey, surrounded by enemies, under constant threat of survival, and possesses few natural resources. And yet, Israel is the only country in history to have revived an unspoken language. Since its founding, Israel has won the second highest number of Nobel Prizes per capita. Although the Jewish people are only 0.2% of the world population, Jews have received 22% of Nobel Prizes, constituting an inexplicable 11,250% above the statistical probability. Israel is the only country that entered the 21st century with a net gain in its number of trees. even more remarkable in an area that's mainly desert. Over 90% of Israeli homes use solar energy for hot water, the highest percentage of any country. Israeli companies are building the largest solar energy production facility in the world. Israel operates the world's largest desalination plant and is the #1 country providing usable water from seawater. Israel's scientific research institutions are ranked 3rd in the world and are ranked 2 in space sciences. Israel leads the world in medical patents and has revolutionized modern medicine. Oramed is changing the diabetes therapeutic paradigm by delivering insulin in a pill. Rewalk's exoskeleton allows paraplegics to walk. Orcam allows blind people to virtually see. Israel has more patents registered in the US than Russia, India, and China combined, who have 300 times Israel's population. Israel's innovations have improved the way we work, print, drive, read, eat, drink, talk, exercise, and even play. Israel is the only liberal democracy in the Middle East, and its 3rd largest party is often the Arab Party. Israel has provided humanitarian aid and rescue services to over 140 countries, even to some that refuse to recognize it, like Syria and Lebanon. Israel is the 3rd most educated country in the world, according to the OECD. Israel has the world's 2nd highest number of new books per capita. Israel has the 3rd highest rate of entrepreneurship among women in the world. And in 1969, Israel elected Golda Meir, the 2nd female head of state in modern history. In proportion to its population, Israel has the largest number of high-tech startup companies in the world. In absolute numbers, Israel has more startups than any other country except the US and China. Israel is the only country whose indigenous population returned to its native land after 2,000 years of forced exile. There are 26 official Muslim states in the world and 18 official Christian states, but there is only one Jewish state. Israel, a small place making a big difference.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
And now on this supremely significant celebration of Shabbat and the celebration of Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, we read the Kaddish with special poignancy. First of all, we remember the blessed memory of Congressman Al C. Hastings, who stood proudly for the Jewish state of Israel during his tenure in the Congress, something that not all Democrats have done and not all African Americans have done. We give him thanks and honor his memory. We also tragically mourn the loss of those who have fallen to the coronavirus and also black youths who have been taken by police officers for no good reason. But on this day, we especially celebrate and honor the memory of those valiant Israelis, and some Americans and other Jews who came over to fight for Israel, who established Israel against seemingly insurmountable odds in 1948, who continued to fight battles and wars for survival, especially the Yom Kippur War, in which so many brave soldiers had fallen, and they kept the dream alive in Israel. As we read the Kaddish, let us be inspired by their heroism, and let us give thanks to their memory, their blessed memory, as together we read the Kaddish. Yisgadal v'yisgadash Shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach ruseh v'yamlich malchuseh, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayeh d'chol beis Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mivorach le'olam ulmei ulmaya, yisporach v'yistabach v'yispo'ar, v'yischomam v'yisnaseh, v'yisadar v'yisaleh v'yisalal Shemei d'kedusha b'richu. Le'elam enqa b'chasa v'shirasa, tush b'chasa v'nechemasa, da'am yachon v'yama v'yimru amen. Yehei shlam Rabbah min shmaya v'chayim, aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, Uyaseh shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'yimru amen. And as we read this Kaddish and every prayer, let it not just be a meaningless ritual, but let us translate its words and its feelings, its sentiments into action as we give thanks for the memory of those who came before us, whose sacrifice allowed us to live in a time when Israel is real, when we have a bastion of dignity, decency, and democracy in the Middle East. Let us do what we can with our lives, inspired by their memory, to keep Israel safe, strong, secure, and also to help Israel, to criticize Israel when it's wrong, in order that it may live up to the highest ideals of our people and the prophets, so that it will not just be another country, but will continue as it has since the beginning. The only country in the world that has more trees now than when it started, so that it will continue to be a paragon of virtue and an example of what the human spirit is able to accomplish when it lives up to the highest ideals of our people, of our prophets, and of our shared humanity. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom and happy 73rd birthday to Israel. I'm Sharon Leibovitz, and I am thrilled that you've joined with Va-Dor Va-Dor to celebrate Shabbat with us today. At Va-Dor Va-Dor, we offer something very special and unique, a Judaism based on reason, intellect, and science, a rational, or as we call it, inspirational Judaism, where all are welcome, regardless of denomination, beliefs, or views. We honor traditions, respect science, and celebrate spirituality. We hope that you're enjoying our Shabbat and Rabbi Barry Silver, and will consider joining and supporting Va-Dor Va-Dor and all we have to offer. I'd like to share some of our upcoming programming with you. Foremost, we will hold our Shabbat outdoors at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, together in person safely at the Canyon Amphitheater in Boynton Beach. The address can be found on screen. Come out with your folding chair and wear a mask and be ready to celebrate Shabbat, Israel, and Earth Day together with Va-Dor Va-Dor. Please also bring some non-perishable food items to help feed those in need in our local area. Tikkun Olam. Don't miss a special musical Shabbat together with us. We hope to see you all there. This week, we have 2 discussions for your participation. Our chat with 2 rabbis on Tuesday, April 20th at 7 p.m., discussing Torah and more with Rabbi Barry and guest Orthodox Rabbi Zvi Khan. And our Rabbi Sam Silver Controversial Issues Forum on Wednesday, April 21st at 7 p.m. with Rabbi Barry and guests, both on Zoom. Next Saturday, April 24th at 10 a.m., we'll hold our monthly, more traditional Shabbat morning service live on Zoom, led for us by educator and cantorial soloist Andrew Sussman. If you want a different and exciting view of Shabbat and modern Judaism, join us for this Hamish Shabbat gathering where we can all be involved and create community together. We have a very interesting presentation next Sunday, April 25th at 7:30 p.m. by educator Jeff Cashton, about the lesser-known side of genius Leonardo da Vinci. His visionary machines and ideas were way ahead of his time. We hope that you'll choose Lador Va-Dor and join us for some of our upcoming events and programs, which can be found on our website, ladorvador.org, our Facebook page, and within our voice email newsletters. We don't want you to miss a thing. Tonight and each Friday evening, Lador Va-Dor gets together for our Oneg Shabbat Zoom and Schmooze at 8 p.m., where we can continue our celebration of Shabbat together with song and discussion. And we hope we'll get to see you and hear from you as well. Be well, and we wish you all Shabbat Shalom and a great week ahead with love and peace from Lador Va-Dor.
May you be blessed and protected with good health and prosperity and security. May the light of love shine upon you always. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May you be lifted up to new heights of transcendence, of spirituality, and of achievement by remembering the fighting Jews who overcame seemingly insurmountable odds in order to establish the wonderful state of Israel. Let us not only strive to achieve a Jewish state, but also strive to accomplish a Jewish state of mind with the motto Im Tirtzu and Zoagadah. If you will it, it's no dream. And let us also always remember that the reason why Israel was established and why the Jews were able to overcome seemingly incredible odds is because all Jews joined together in common to fight the battles against tyranny and oppression and injustice. Let the state of Israel remind us of what we Jews can accomplish when Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox, and Jewish Renewal, and atheists, and agnostics, and Republicans and Democrats, when all Jews join together in order to be a powerful force for good and for morality in this world of darkness. The world needs Jews to join together as one like a laser and fix and focus our light in order to end the tyranny of darkness and bring about a world brimming with brotherhood, joyous with justice, and as my dad used to say, shimmering with shalom. Amen.
Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Hevenu shalom, Hevenu shalom, Hevenu shalom.